Hmm. Hey, hi. For some reason today, I pulled out, I have a basket here in my office that's filled with little rocks. And so I've been sitting here playing with these rocks, and it's interesting. There's different tones for the different sizes of rocks, but these two rocks are about the same size. And when hit against each other, I wouldn't want to be in between them, would you? When I hit them. But I was thinking about something with these two rocks. Were you ever in a dilemma? Where you had to make a tough choice and you just weren't sure which choice was the best? For instance, let's say that I had to move from my house to a small apartment and I could only take one of my cats with me. Now, most of you know that my wife Lois and I have more than one cat. So, how do we choose of all the cats we have which cat to take with us if we could only choose one? Oh my, that would be a dilemma. Some people might say that that is like being placed between a rock and a hard place. Did you ever hear that phrase, between a rock and a hard place? I couldn't make up my mind. I was caught between a rock and a hard place. Well, being between a rock and a hard place means that you're in a very difficult position because you have to make a really hard decision. And often that decision is between two very difficult and unacceptable choices. I don't want just one cat. I would like all my cats. Which cats do I get rid of? I don't know. So you're facing these two choices where the avoidance of one might mean finding harm in the other. Yeah, like I was between a rock and a hard place, for if I didn't take out another loan and go deeper into debt, I could not pay off the debts I already owed. Wow, between a rock and a hard place. Now, doing some reading on this, and I'm finding some interesting things. The rock and a hard place is a newer version of an older phrase that alludes to being crushed or caught between two rocks. Um, the rock and the hard place phrase was dating to the early 1900s. But before that, in mythology, there is another phrase that was used that is similar between Scylla and Charybdis. The oldest of phrases between Scylla and Charybdis, which is found in Homer's Odyssey from Greek mythology. And in there you find on this rock, there was this monster named Scylla, and the whirlpool, the fatal whirlpool of Charybdis, between which Odysseus had to sail through this narrow passage. If he went one way, he would hit the rock. If he went the other way, he would go to the whirlpool. If he hit the rock, he would confront the monster Scylla. If he hit the whirlpool, well, Charybdis, he would go down. So that was one phrase that was used in ancient times. You were caught between Scylla and Charybdis. Now, we don't say that anymore. Then there was another phrase that was used for a while, that you were caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. The Roman writer Virgil, according to what I read, used this. And being caught between the devil and the deep blue sea alludes to the choice between hell or drowning in deep waters. Wow, those were some interesting things. So being caught between a rock and a hard place. Did you ever have to make a hard choice? Yes. Life does include some hard choices at times, doesn't it? I've personally had to make some very difficult and hard decisions in my life where it actually felt like I was stuck or caught between a rock and a hard place. If I chose this, I'd give up something. If I chose the other option, I'd also give up something. What do I choose? Very difficult times when we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. But since the beginning of time, God's people have faced choices, largely in who we serve. Deuteronomy 30:15, God is saying to the children of Israel, today I'm giving you a choice. You can have life and success, or you can have death and harm. Well, most of us would say, well, that's not a hard choice at all. Give us life and success rather than death or harm. And rightly so. In 1 Kings 18, the prophet Elijah stood before the people, again, God's people, and he said, how long will it take you to make up your minds? If the Lord is the one and only God, worship him. But if Baal is the one and only God, worship him. So even God's people at times have had to make a decision of who they worship. Are they going to give themselves fully to God? Or will they also allow Baal or other gods to come in and be a part of our lives? That's usually not a choice between a rock and a hard place. We know that serving God is better than serving other gods. But it is a struggle between our human flesh, what we want, and what God wants. The Apostle Paul in Romans 8:7 says, "The mind is ruled by the power of the flesh, or the power of sin, and it is at war with God. It does not obey God's laws. It can't." So we do want to make a choice to seek God's ways, I hope, right? Yeah, that's not getting stuck too hard between a rock and a hard place. It's a fairly simple choice to make, but it's one that we have to do constantly, to seek God's ways. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. In all your ways obey him, and then he will make your paths smooth and straight, and you won't be stuck between a rock and a hard place." And I just dropped it. Okay, a rock and a hard place. So think about that. And when you're faced with a decision, choose life, first of all, choose God, and then maybe you won't get stuck between a rock and a hard place by putting yourself in that position. Well, whatever choice you make today, I hope it's one that is pleasing to God and glorifying to him, and one in which you will find joy and peace for today.